The more you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
The blah-blah-blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah-blah-blah.
Good vibes.
Blah-blah-blah.
Good vibes.
Blah-blah-blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that. 108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track.
Straight-faced said, "Who says you need a Navy?" And as soon as he said that, it was just like a switch went off in my head. It was just like, oh, right, yeah, who says you need a Navy?
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. We are going to be chatting with Brian Sovryn a little bit later from Sovryn Tech. We're going to be talking about some Bitcoins and tech stuff and Anarchy and all sorts of fun stuff like that. It's a pretty fun app. You guys should enjoy it. But first, as always, the one and only Graham D&D Sex Wizard Dunlop. How's it going, buddy?
I was always a fighter.
For real?
Yeah.
But now you say you're a lover, not a fighter.
Well, I know. I was just thinking I might change my character if I ever do that again to a magic user.
A magic user?
Yeah.
Not a predator?
I'm more into the
bred?
occult and stuff.
No? That should be like a succubus?
No, that's not. No. That's what you can fight, probably.
You fight?
Yeah.
Well,
I would fight against the succubus.
So who plays the succubus? It's just imaginary?
Yeah. It's up to the dungeon master.
Who's the dungeon master?
That depends.
On what?
On who you're playing with.
Do you need cards or anything?
We used to have a guy that was always a dungeon master. And he'd throw dice at his younger brother, hit him in the head and stuff. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
So you need dice? That's it?
It's a role-playing game. What do you mean? You don't know how to play it?
No. I got tricked into almost playing it one time at my buddy Trevi's house. They're like, yeah, we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, Dungeons and Dragons. This sounds great. I think I thought it was a video game.
Yeah, and then you sit down and you get a piece of paper and a dice and your pen.
My buddy's like, I'm a wizard. And I'm like, I'm fucking out of here. And that's the most exposure I've had, other than the magic dice that we have.
Yeah, I have the dice somewhere. Somebody left dice here.
Daven.
Yeah, Daven. I don't know where it went. Yeah, anyways. I'd like to do it again. Try it again.
Well, you could do virtual D&D with the guys in the chats.
No.
I'm pretty sure they're playing virtual Dungeons and Dragons this Friday. Actually, when this app comes out. So that's what you could be doing Friday night. You could do it. Can you play it? Could you play it digitally?
Well, what do you mean?
Could you play
like
it
in VR?
No, just like this.
Like in podcast, a chat and no, I know you kind of got to be around people.
Do you?
Yeah.
You can't just be like.
You'd miss the interaction of watching somebody roll the dice, and it's all your team, right? You're fighting against monsters and stuff like that.
You're fighting.
And you roll dice for how hard you hit them, and and you get killed, and sometimes.
Then you're out.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you got to watch the rest of your team.
So why would you ever let yourself get killed? Or that's up to the dungeon master?
Yeah, it's all roll the dice.
It's all about the dice.
He rolls for the monsters, right? Or the dragon or whatever.
Huh.
I never used to get killed, though, but some guys get killed all the time. Like our little brothers
doesn't like them.
No, it's in the roll of the dice.
It's all about the dice?
Yeah.
So how does it go then?
Really? Okay, so we have a character with a certain amount of stamina, right, and hit points, they call them, and you'd have different attributes and how hard you hit, and it's all in a calculation. You roll for it at the beginning. You roll your character out.
Okay.
Different than the chat we just had tonight with this guy that's coming out later, the avatars. You roll it all out. So you have different abilities. You choose, like, do I want strength or wisdom or dexterity?
Okay.
And your character has all these attributes, and then it's a calculation, like you fighting against some monsters. So when I swing at him or fight him, I either hit him, and then if I hit him, I roll how much damage it does. Just like if I get hit. from a monster. So I could get killed in once. If the roll was like 100 or whatever, I might get killed in the one hit.
Ooh, tough one.
Yeah.
So you could totally do that over the internet.
It wouldn't be the same.
Try it out. Maybe it's better.
Well, I'll try it with those guys for sure in the chats.
The chats.
So that's your new chat jingle?
Yeah.
Anyways, it's been like 35 years. That's what I remember about it.
It's been that long since you played? Huh.
But my friend Rye plays it with another friend. The guys I did the escape room with, so I want to go play with them one day.
Dungeons and Dragons is back, bitches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good.
We got to do the Grimerica escape room.
Yeah, I'll do the escape room. I'm down with the escape room. I've seen 2 now since we started talking about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're creeping up all over the place.
Fuck yeah.
So, yeah, man. So, what do you want to talk about?
Okay.
No.
There we go.
No,
I'm going to talk about my weekend.
We had the new moon, dark sky, which is great. Had a plan camping, pitched our tent, went back there for the night. Crystal clear. Darkest night. Decided to read that meditation, did the singing bowl, and that shit starts happening. Pow.
Okay.
We started seeing flash bulbs.
Okay, that's good.
Streakers coming down. Grim them up.
No, come on. Turn down.
7 Note sky watching.
How was it?
Saw a lot of stuff.
Really? You went out with your family?
I couldn't believe all the stuff that we seen. We went out through the air mattress in the back of the truck.
Yeah, but stuff is not like stuff. What's stuff?
Mostly satellites, I think.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how many.
You should look into that.
Should I?
I don't think you can see that many. There's some people that
because the
argue
Earth is flat and nothing leaves a low Earth orbit.
No. Just that they're not all in the getting light shine off them, right? They don't have lights up there, so it's all sunlight, right? You should only see
pretty far north, though. There's something to look into, I suppose.
Yeah.
Something you really have to visualize. But if I can see the moon.
So you should, next time you do it, plan to go around a new moon because the sky is much darker without that moonlight.
I bet you could probably see the Milky Way a lot better.
It's really amazing.
Yeah, we went, it was like a half moon. We threw the air mattress in the back of the truck, went out there, blew it up, fucking had all the blankets, slid there, and just watched the sky for a while.
Yeah, nice.
As soon as we got there, right away, we seen a satellite like disappearing onto the horizon. So we seen, oh, look, a satellite. Kids are watching it and everything, and then it just like disappeared. And they're like, holy fuck! And I explained to him it was a satellite.
Yeah.
And we lied down, seen time.
But you don't know if it was a satellite.
We were just pointing them out like crazy. Bing, bing, pew, pew, pew.
Shooting stars.
Yeah, we seen 2 or 3 shooting stars. Yeah. Did
you meditate at all on it, or did you ask for any? Did you throw your intention out there at all? Any conscious contact?
I think I did a little bit.
There's no flash bulbs?
No.
No streakers?
No streakers. Just me. I peed outside. But no, nothing like that. I guess I'm not just...
Any planes going by?
And my kids are there too, so you know they fucking still full out believe that there could be fucking aliens flying around up there. They're probably assuming that they're going to see some. So shouldn't that affect you? Guys should bring more kids out with you.
Well, I don't know. We don't need any help.
I think you do. Clearly, you do.
So I didn't know any planes. Did you have any planes?
No, we were pretty far off the flight path.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 or 4, but they're way, way, way west of us. It's all right.
Yeah.
Nothing to report.
So we're going out this weekend. We should get a chance to sky watch this weekend together.
Oh, yeah,
when this episode comes out, we'll probably be the next day. We'll be road tripping down to some trailer in the woods or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring the telescope. I got a sweet telescope.
Nice. And we might do some podcasts and stuff.
We'll probably do some podcasting. We usually will have a road trip bonus for you guys when we do that.
Can we advertise another
so go to Grimerica.ca/support, guys.
Can we advertise a Shroomcast?
We're gonna give you a bonus app for the road trip.
Shroomcast?
And there's gonna be a Shroomcast.
Yeah.
But this one's not going in the regular feed like the last one did. This one is just going...
In the bonus feed?
In the bonus feed, yeah. There's too many people now for me to just... I'm feeling a little more apprehensive about it.
Yeah.
But there's only like 10 people in the black budget support feed, so I don't mind them. So we'll do it. Joey's coming out of retirement for it. We're headed out to the mountains this time. This time should be a little better. We're not like in the basement. We're free to just like, no one else is going to be there.
It's going to be close to a full moon too.
Real close to a full moon. And it looks like the weather's going to be okay, so we should be able to just walk out of the fucking trailer and poof. Won't see a ton of stars, but we can look at the moon with a telescope.
Yeah.
If we're not too fucked up.
Should I bring my singing bowl and then meditation?
Yeah, might as well. It will be interesting to go sea setting. Maybe we'll do some video. We'll bring the GoPro and stuff.
You think you want a sea setting on? Should we try that? Do the meditation and everything? And just
see what the fuck happens. So yeah, that'll be there. Check out Grimerica.ca/support, guys. Sign up for a monthly, and you'll get access to that. Do a one-time donation. Seriously, the monthlies are the best. There's options there as low as $1 a month. That's really like 25 cents an app. You care less about us than candy.
Yeah, it helps us cover our expenses and stuff here. Which
$5 seems to be the most popular. Again, check your subscriptions because I got a few cancellations last month. Just make sure if you do really not like us, but it's good to just go now, check your subscription, make sure you're still subbed because
PayPal
sometimes
will actually
PayPal's a fucker.
Yeah, it'll disconnect and say that we had unsubscribed you, which we've never done. So don't believe that if that happens.
Propaganda.
I know it happens to other shows as well, and I don't know why. But, maybe people's credit cards expire, that kind of thing. So I also want to push reviewing the show.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I don't know, I feel like that's one of the really big ways to help us is just to review the show, like 5 stars. I mean, a lot of these podcasts are reading them out. I mean, I would like to read one here. Do you want to read this?
Yeah.
Can I read one? You got a jingle? Or?
And now another edition of Grimerica Goodies by the people.
Whenever I play that jingle, people should be thinking jingle opportunity.
And we do listen to jingles. We had a good giggle fest here before we started recording this intro, and some jingles you might not hear on the air, but we do listen to them. Some of them may be a little
racy,
inappropriate.
No, I'm playing that one, man. I'm playing
at the end of the show, not in the middle of the show.
What about at the very beginning?
No. So this is from Happy Alien in the UK, and he says, Conspiracy Hey. Should probably say Conspiracy A, since we're Canadian. CANADA.
Get to it.
Grimerica is most entertaining podcast on matters like conspiracy, paranormal experiences, as well as the unusual and shamanistic trends. These are to name but a few of the varieties of alternate media subjects these two talk about. It doesn't stop there. Darren and Graham are two Canadian nationals with very different personalities that still remain very good friends. One would not hesitate to take a shot at Bigfoot, while the other one wouldn't wish to see it harmed in any way. Their pre- and post-show chats are filled with fun banter as well as comments on subjects like listener trip reports, UFO quotes, chemtrails, and anything else that takes their fancy.
Tickles? Or takes?
Takes. They take it the fancy in the UK instead of we tickle it here. They take it out there. They have interesting guests on all the time, and they are pretty knowledgeable on the subjects they talk about. I've listened to every episode at least once. I put the Grimerica Show in my top 3 alternative media shows. My all-time top 3, he says. THC, Grimerica, and Jimmy Church Radio. Between these 3 shows, you will never need to subscribe to another podcast show on these subjects again. And then he's got 5 thumbs up and a mushroom. Do yourself a favor and subscribe to Grimerica for as little as $1 a month and keep it ad-free. Best buck I ever spent.
Good advice.
Yeah, thanks.
Smart guy. Do what you can. Do what you can. What else you got?
Man, I got some pretty heavy synchronicities from some listeners about some recent events, and I've got some feedback again and a long overdue email.
What do you want to start with? Boy's choice.
I got the UFO quote as well.
I don't want to start with that.
Okay, so let's get into this then. So
is it synchro?
Yeah, here's a super synchro.
I'm a rambling Graham with synchronicities all over the web. And Darren is skeptical about everyone and don't believe it yet.
So this is from Ryan. He says, Graham, I don't know what to call this, but I'm freaked out. I'm texting you in the morning after the Vegas shooting. Last night I was watching Netflix at around 1 a.m. Michigan time, which is 3 hours behind Vegas time. My Bernese mountain dog, who is instinctual but often too lazy to care, was in our kitchen sleeping by the back door. All of a sudden, he lets out 2 barks that sent chills down my spine. Now, I usually don't think of anything of it, but for some reason I was overcome with an urge to go grab my pistol from the nightstand, and I mean immediately. So after a quick check of the entrances of our small bungalow, I figured out everything was good, put the pistol back, and went back to Netflix. Still shaken, though, I went down to the bar in my basement to grab a beer, and I was suddenly enveloped with a feeling of terror. I wasn't scared, but the feeling I was experiencing could only be described as a feeling of terror, like a ghoul or demon or something straight from a horror film were about to appear. If that happened, I would not have been surprised. It was almost like the feeling you get if you're about to watch one of those terrible ISIS beheading videos. Just pure evil. Anyway, I think you see what I'm getting at. Fast forward to this AM, heading to the gym, I'm listening to coverage on the incident, and I was about wrecked once the timeline of all this came to fruition. While I was dealing with the unusual dog barking and possible evil entity taking up residence at my bar, the Vegas thing was happening. 22:08 Vegas time. 1:08 Michigan time. I don't know what caused this. Coincidence, epinephrine dump from what I thought may have been an intruder into my home. Synchro, who knows, man. Just know this about me. I'm not the guy to freak out and grab my pistol anytime for dog barks. So with the approximate timing of everything, along with the feelings I felt on my mini beer run, I don't know, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So I don't even think I've had time to reply to Ryan, because it's pretty fresh and we've been pretty busy. But I was thinking about... do you know that Global Consciousness Network, and they had all those random number generators?
Yes.
That were affected at 9/11? Like, maybe we can pick up this mass emotion from a location. You know? Like, I mean, I wonder if they look at those random number generators now, if something had spiked, and, you know, maybe he's picking up on that, or the dog was picking up on it. Who knows?
Clearly both of them at some point.
Yeah. So then there's a follow-up email, too. So, he says, Super Synchro Part 2. So, Graham, in talking to my family about this crazy experience I wrote earlier about, I found some more information out that makes it even crazier. So, while I was at the gym, I got a text from my mom asking for the cable login. Not 3 minutes later, my wife texted me asking for the cable login. I asked if she had spoken to my mom, and she said not. So, I took it as a little mini synchro that was kind of acknowledging the weirdness that I experienced earlier. So I ended up calling my mom as I walked out of the gym, and she tells me that my sister had been going to Vegas yesterday, the day of the shooting, for a wedding convention. One of the hotels that was taking part in this convention was Mandalay Bay. My sister loves Jason Aldean and would have gone to the show if given the opportunity. I'm trying to stay perceptive, as today is one of the weirdest feeling days of my life. I'll keep you posted. Peace. And he says a donation is forthcoming after my honeymoon this week. Wow, well, congratulations.
Happy honeymoon.
Yeah. Maybe that's the connection. Maybe that's why him and his dog felt it, because there was some sort of family connection to it.
That's right.
I was just thinking, like, you know, maybe there's got to be that coherence somehow.
Alternate timeline, or...
Yeah, something.
If time is truly not linear and everything's happening at once, and there's a bunch of different fucking every choice generates a different future, that there could be some sort of overlap.
Yeah.
Sure.
Interesting.
I'm not going to rate anything.
Thanks, Ryan. I mean, did you want to talk about that Vegas thing at all? Other than that? That's pretty fresh.
Yeah.
Some pretty weird stuff.
We know we had a few Albertans. 2, I think. Someone from Okotoks.
There?
Yeah.
Killed?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, and someone from Edmonton.
Yeah, my friend's girlfriend's friend or something, or brother or something, or was there at the thing.
Really?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a weird one, because we do know people, and we've heard people locally that have been partaked in it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a terrible thing. Hopefully, hopefully none of our listeners were too affected by it or affected at all.
I hope our thoughts and prayers and love and light and all that stuff go out to all the people affected.
Absolutely.
Huh. And we'll probably get into, probably will dive into, I don't know, I bet you this weekend we'll be talking about it a little bit, dive into all the narratives and the conspiracies around it probably.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't want to taint my mushroom experience. Got anything a little more uplifting, motherfucker?
Probably. Yeah, I got one. This is just like the long overdue email.
We don't have a jingle for that.
Gerald in St. Louis. Gentlemen. Graham. Spam Graham. Graham at Grimerica.com. This email is long overdue, but I wanted to throw some love your way and say thanks for the many years of Grimerica in my ears. I first entered the world of podcasts back in 2013, and you guys were one of the first I began to follow, along with Joe Rogan and the Higher Side Chats. Since then, I've added and dropped a multitude of podcasts to my feed, but Grimerica has remained a staple and continues to be one of the best. I have so much love and respect for your dedication to keeping the show ad-free, as well as the overall quality of the character you two espouse. You two have developed a tremendous community of like-minded folks around the show, and it's clear that you care about all of us. Heck, you've even liked some of my Instagram posts in the past. What other podcast does that? I absolutely love the long banter-filled intros, and as someone recently commented on some previous feedback, I will sometimes skip the interviews, but I never skip the intro. That iTunes troll Mikey can take a hike. Long live the intros. Over the last couple of years, I began drifting away from the conspiracy stuff, fear-based, to a more spiritual and self-empowering outlook. I appreciate that you guys cover this side of the spectrum too. Recent shows that have really revved my engine were PMH Atwater, Tristan Haggard, Erliana Samsara, and Ricard, as well as some older shows like Dan Winter and Cliff High. All very timely episodes for me as I continue my path towards a more powerful, enlightened self. Looking forward to more stuff on Antarctica. Oh, yes. Lastly, I'd like to throw out a mention for a few individuals I've recently discovered who have really contributed to my increasing understanding of the universe. Admittedly, these are probably more up Graham's alley, as the concepts they cover are pretty out there by conventional standards. I recommend looking into Og Tellas, Rolled Boom, and Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Yes, Flying Rainbow Lasagna. She's definitely a tough pill to swallow at first, but when you dig into all the information, it's really quite fascinating. It makes a ton of sense. Not sure if any of these would be good guests, but certainly make for good brain candy if you want something lofty to chew on. Anyway, I'm getting long-winded, so I'll end it here. Thank you again for the great work, and I'll send a meager donation. Starving artist here, and we'll make more of an effort to do so again as funds permit. Much love, Gerald, in St. Louis. And P.S., Darren, don't shoot the Sasquatch.
I'll take it into consideration.
Really?
No, I won't. Thanks for the message,
Man, we're going to be in the forest this week. We might hear some knocks on the trees.
I better bring my knife.
I think that's Sasquatch territory. Your knife's going to do nothing against the Sasquatch. You can just disappear in front of your eyes if he wants. It'll just show fear, and then and then he won't come around. Don't bring any weapons. You don't need weapons in the forest.
You think I could just tackle him?
You're not going to even just enjoy his presence.
Wonder if Joey has a gun.
Oh, my God. Someone else?
Down and Graham, going deep. It's the profound UFO quote of the week.
Okay.
It
was May 24th.
Okay.
This is the profound UFO quote.
Okay.
It was May 24th, and we are lying, drifting on a leisurely swell in exactly 95 degrees west and 7 degrees south. We saw the shine of phosphorescent eyes drifting on the surface on dark nights, and on one single occasion we saw the sea boil and bubble, while something like a big wheel came up and rotated in the air, while some of our dolphins tried to escape by hurling themselves desperately through space. That was from Thor Heyerdahl, the Kon-Tiki raft in May 1947.
What dolphins? What the fuck?
I don't know. That was weird. I didn't read the whole thing. His dolphins, like when he had dolphins traveling with him, his own dolphins jumped into space.
Pretty profound.
That's got to be the weirdest UFO quote yet. While some of our dolphins tried to escape by hurling themselves desperately through space. There you have it, buddy.
There you have it.
So what else? Precog, synchro, precog, listener reviews. Yeah, just that's about it, I think. Review the show, and we'll have a good wrap up next week. Oh, what else do we need to talk about? Oh, that's about it, I think.
Well, I'm sure we're forgetting a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
Ponzi, I sent out your magnets. They're in Graham's hands now with a stamp and everything on them. So.
Did you put them back in my pocket?
Yeah.
Okay, there's so do we talk about the chat?
No.
There's a perpetual chat. There's a link in the show notes to it.
I already played the jingle from the chat.
Oh, yeah, right.
Do everything in the show notes. Everything will be all right.
Yeah.
Enjoy the chat with Brian Sovryn, Sovryn Tech.
All right, so tonight we've got with us Brian Sovryn of Sovryn Tech Podcast, and he's a developer of Zomia offline games, and he's got a podcast, Sovryn Tech. He talks about tech and anarchy as well, which is really interesting. Two of the things that we're kind of always interested a little bit, but we don't really get a chance to get into very much on the show, so it's good to have him with us today. So thanks for coming on the show, Brian.
Oh, it's a real honor. Yeah, definitely love to talk tech and anarchy. And, I know you guys like to get into perhaps the conspiratorial and some other wild subjects that I absolutely love talking that stuff. So it makes life interesting. You know what I mean? Yeah,
it's great. And I want to give a shout out to Eric Heldstad, who's one of the listeners who put us in touch. And he was like one of his favorite podcasts was Sovryn Tech. And he says, we should get in touch with you. So sometimes I forget to give our listeners a specific shout out, so I'm glad he connected us.
Yeah, right on. Love the synergy.
Name?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Darren's been interested in anarchy lately, and Darren's kind of the techie of both of us. So it's really interesting to get into both of these subjects for a bit. I mean, Darren, we don't talk about politics that much on the show. I mean, I know you've heard a couple of our episodes, but we try and stay away from it. But we've been talking about exploring this a little deeper, so it'd be good to get into that a little bit.
We stay away from it more these days than we used to, that's for sure. Like, I mean, a couple of years ago, it wasn't quite as loaded.
Yeah, sure. That's totally understandable. I mean, honestly, like I talk about anarchism, but I talk about anarchism sort of because it's like anti-political in that it comes up with solutions that don't require, the use of force, that don't require political action and electoral politics and all that. So I can really appreciate that, especially, I mean, yeah, like you said, it's loaded today. I mean, ever since that orange guy, got put in office, it's, things have been a little crazy, and you can almost believe anything that gets said. So, yeah, steering clear of it, not a terrible idea. I totally understand that.
Gets you into trouble.
Well, that's because it's even changed some people in the libertarian movement as well, hasn't it? I mean, hasn't it sort of shifted some people more towards or away from politics more so than would normally happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're really in very polarizing times, that's for sure. And a lot of people, I think, when Trump, I guess we can say his name, I mean, when he was on the campaign trail, seemed like a very anti-authoritarian, which is an ironic statement because, the presidency of the United States is the most authoritarian position in the world. But he seemed very anti-authoritarian, very anti-legacy system, and so I think a lot of people were very attracted to that. They felt like he was finally, kind of pulling the curtain from the Wizard of Oz. And of course, then when, once this person gets in office, does anything feel any different? No, not really. But I think there's maybe a lot of people that feel a lot of pride or other things where they're like, oh, no, I got to double down. I just got to stick with this. I finally voted for once, or I did whatever, and I'm going to ride with it. Though I will say, I frequent a lot of libertarian circles, and admittedly, ever since like the MOBA dropped and some other things have been happening, it seems like some libertarians are coming to their senses that, okay, wait a minute, we were wrong, and they'll admit that they're wrong, and that's always good to hear too.
Yeah. And when you mean wrong that this wasn't the change that people thought could happen, like that really the deep state is kind of in control in the end anyways, and the president, president is like a puppet, like we thought all along.
Yeah, precisely. I think that kind of thinking, finally prevailed for a lot of people. I mean, not for everyone, but there's some who I want to give credit to for at least coming out and saying, "Oops, we were wrong."
Yeah. That's a good point. So, what brought you towards anarchism? Like, has it been a long time? Like, because I've thought about it for, I don't know, 5 or 10 years maybe. I mean, I haven't been that into it, but I've definitely thought about.
I can't go full anarchy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now I have to convert you. No, I'm kidding. I don't think converting necessarily works. But
I'm a registered libertarian, though.
Really?
Oh, right on. Okay.
Yeah, fastest growing party in Canada.
Yeah, I've heard that. So okay, well, cool. I mean, as far as like my own path with anarchism, I was actually in the U.S. military back in 2002 to 2004, and when you're that deep in the beast, shall we say, if you've got a brain on your head, you can kind of see the reality of what's going on, with all of that. And so I had my moment where I realized kind of the reality of the situation. I mean, and it took a few years after that. It wasn't until like maybe, I don't know, 2008 when I started to become what people will call liberty minded, mm-hmm. where you're either a libertarian or libertarian-ish, something mm-hmm. like that. And then 2010, it really then it started to click that, okay, no, all of this is like, all of electoral politics is just way off base, and I would even argue unethical. But regardless, in fact, what it was, there was a couple of particular moments, but one of them, there was a guy named Judge Andrew Napolitano who's very famous in libertarian circles.
Yep.
And he was on a show. He was on John Stossel's show, which at the time was on Fox Business. And he was debating a more political anarchist, and the debate was going on, and they said, okay, well, if we get rid of government, what do we do about the Navy? And Judge Andrew Napolitano just straight-laced, straight-faced said, who says you need a Navy? And as soon as he said that, it was just like a switch went off in my head. It was just like, oh, right, yeah, who says you need a Navy?
Wow.
And it was it's such a simple statement to make, but for me it was very powerful, especially with my history in the military. To hear somebody like say that, of course, on such a big stage as Fox Business was at the time, regardless of my problems with Fox News, that was really something for me. So that really cemented me on that. But then anarchism has a lot of different flavors, and certainly, ever since I've decided to declare myself an anarchist, there has been, I've shifted in perhaps what prefixes or suffixes I would put on that. So that's my path.
Huh. So, it interests me in many ways, but one of the ways, and I'd like to hear your argument, like your argument for it, I guess, and maybe some of the responses that people would mainly argue against it, because I do think it's one of those things that takes a while to wake up to. Like why I like it in theory is because, and I don't know if there's evidence that it will actually work on a large scale, but we can talk about that as well. But in theory, I like it because my day-to-day interactions with people and with situations, and even just making a transaction on Kijiji or something. I've had these experiences where I buy or sell something from some stranger on Kijiji, and it feels like the greatest experience ever. Like I get all weird and emotional. I'm like, what this was just a great, like, we both got what we wanted out of this deal, and it was just made, I don't know. I think that's a experience of a part of what anarchy would be like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you wouldn't have necessarily, I mean, again, there are a lot of different types of anarchism. I usually try to steer clear of like pinning down a type. I mean, the most important thing I think really to say is that anarchism like doesn't promise any kind of utopia or paradise. All really anarchism is about is giving you choice and opportunities, like the choice to deal with people that you did through the service you mentioned and everything, giving you that ability, and there isn't a government to get in the way of that. Now, I mean, there's the chance that could have been a very bad business deal, certainly, but that'd be true whether there was governments or not.
Right.
But I mean, there's old concepts in human interaction, like caveat emptor, which, means buyer beware. Okay, well, I mean, that's been known for a very long time. That's why it's even in another language. Okay, because, and a dead language at that, because this is just how humans have always sort of dealt with each other. I mean, I make the argument that everybody's born two things. And, if people want to disagree with it, that's fine. Yeah, I'm a very peaceful guy. But you're either you're born an anarchist and an atheist, in my opinion. That's absolutely what you're born. Everything else is a social construct that comes afterwards. That's my thoughts on it. So yeah, there's these very basic. I think you tapped into something very primal of just this very comforting, perhaps even touching on a biological universal, something like empathy. Which is, again, it's a biological, precept of almost every not even just sapient, but sentient creature. I mean, rats have empathy, and it allowed for a peaceful interaction between the two of you because it's just, I mean, you don't want to fall into a naturalistic fallacy or anything, but it's just nature, and it was a beautiful thing for you. And I think if people could get in touch more with, those aspects of themselves, say like empathy and things like that, yeah, you don't need, some kind of like overarching enforcement body, that makes sure that the deal is handled well in all of this. I think humans naturally, I remember, of course, I'm sure you know the movie Fight Club. I think one of the beautiful points in that was that people will do almost anything to avoid a fight. And I think that's absolutely true. I think that's a fair statement to make, is that, people really don't want to mess with each other, that people really want peaceful interactions overall. There's just things that go on that I don't know, maybe convince them otherwise at times. But anyway, please continue.
I agree.
Sorry.
No, I think we're cooperative as opposed to really competitive as more of a nature. I mean, I really do think that's the way it is. But like you say, it's either social contract or culturally influenced from, I mean, just the media and the news even. I mean, just got to change. It's way less fearful out there day to day than you would think by watching some of the media and even social media included in that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you go on Facebook and, you think the world was burning, but then you can go to the grocery store and amazingly everybody's just fine. And you could talk to anybody, any race, any color, any persuasion, religious or otherwise. Exactly. I mean, and everything happens just fine. I mean, that's just the way things normally work when you don't have like these domination structures or these fear-mongering, businesses like the media and whatever else, or social media, telling you that, oh, no, everything's bad, you need us. I mean, fear is what empowers a lot of these, institutions. Just
stay away from the colleges.
Oh, colleges is terrible. Stay away from public schools. Stay away from all that. I love Isaac Asimov. He said that he's convinced the only education there is self-education. I think that's the absolute truth. I mean, teach yourself. That's how you go about it.
Yeah,
bingo, bango.
That's one of the easy arguments against it. Really, the government, schools, but there are some trickier ones.
Education system's a fucking joke.
Yeah, that's an easy one. But I mean, there's stuff like infrastructure and roads. Like people, I think, have a hard time. I mean, roads is like one of the big arguments, I believe, and I think people have a hard time imagining how we would be here without the government.
Sure. Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, there's a lot of like infrastructure type things that people just can't imagine, existing without government. Government has in many ways made sure that they are the ones building that infrastructure. And that's not to say that others independently, private business or private individuals hadn't tried. For example, you had in the 19th century. I like to stick to more recent stuff because people, if you start telling them history, usually they say, oh, well, that was 100 years ago or something. Well, I still think that's very recent, but whatever. Anyway, so for example, there was an anarchist who is also someone that kind of helped me in my little awakening towards anarchism. His name was Lysander Spooner, and he tried creating an independent mail service. This is in the 19th century. And the government shut him down. It's not because he was doing anything bad or wrong. They just didn't want any competition. And of course, I mean, the United States Postal Service is a very odd, like hybrid animal. It's like partly government, partly private. It's a strange thing. But anyway, they didn't like that competition. Equally at that same time, I mean, most roads of the 19th century, most of the original roads, were built by private industry. There's even one could get, and some anarchists kind of go this direction. One could get particularly fancy and say, look, at least in the United States, you have 30,000 deaths a year on average from people, just driving. And so the question becomes, okay, there's so much incentive and there's so much money put into making sure that cars, automobiles, and buses and whatever else are so safe and save lives. Why are there still 30,000 people dying a year? What if it's the roads? Like, what if roads are actually a very bad thing, but we're never allowed to because it's all legislated and that's what we have to use, and that's what gets explored and all that through the government. What if there's alternatives even to that? I mean, that's kind of a fancy, answer to bat back at with, who will build the roads. But really, it's the people that'll build the roads. And you see it happen in communities all the time where, because, I mean, how great is a city at maintaining a lot of those roads? They do a terrible job. Usually, just your average community people will just go out there, they'll buy their own blacktop at Home Depot, and they'll start filling in all the potholes. So you already kind of see it. Who will build it? The people will.
Yeah. So what about, do you have a question, Darren?
Oh, I think there'll be patches of gravel in the road, though.
Patches of gravel?
Yeah. And the people's houses are like, yeah, the road's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine there, how it is.
So
yeah, well, I mean, and if that did happen, I mean, that's for the people to choose, right? It's, I mean, because again, anarchism, like I said, isn't like it's not necessarily selling you that everything's going to be amazing, everything's going to be exactly the same, everything's going to be utopia. It's a question of what's ethical, what's not. Like what is okay to do? Is it okay to this is something that amazingly has become a common statement. I'm glad that it has, but taxation is theft.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay to steal from somebody? No. So, I guess you could choose lesser of two evils and say, yeah, but we want roads, so we're going to tax. And I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm saying is that there's no promise of utopia, but it does come down to what's actually ethical and what isn't. And I think once you start going down the road of saying, no pun intended, but, of saying that, well, yeah, but we got to have roads, then you start creating all kinds of arguments, and eventually you end up with war and all these kind. I think it becomes a very slippery slope.
Yeah.
Once you start saying that no, well, we can steal sometimes, we can do this sometimes. So anyway.
I've really noticed, especially in this last year, and we talked about the polarization and a lot of the politics, but the what America was founded on, like it really seems to be coming to light that we're really, or you guys, I mean, we're in Canada, so it's a little different, right? But those, your Constitution and the what's the other one again?
Declaration of Independence.
And the Declaration of Independence. And all.
We have the Bill of Rights.
We have the Bill of Rights, yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting shorter.
Yeah, exactly. So, it seems like we're realizing, or you're realizing, and we're just right behind you, that you're farther away from that than anybody ever thought. Like, and it seems like it's been slipping for over 100 years. But was that close to anarchy? Like, was that as close to anarchy as people? I've never really thought to compare it like this, but like is what they were suggesting as close as you would dare to get back then to anarchism?
Well, this gets into some weird areas. There seem to be suggestions of anarchism that were coming along the way. For example, Thomas Jefferson, who of course was really big, about the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, our Bill of Rights, and and then the Constitution, and of course he ended up being a president and everything. He had a very interesting relationship with a guy named Adam Weishaupt, who is, considered to be the part of the not questionable that it existed, Bavarian Illuminati. This is the guy that kind of started that whole thing, right? And I'm sure you guys know all this, but anyway, in some of the interactions or some of the correspondence with, particularly with like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, there is where he writes that, hey, this guy Adam Weishaupt, he's talking about how, guess what? Men don't need governments. We don't need the church. We don't need this. So, I mean, the people at the time seem to have some concept of anarchism. And also, Jefferson was really big on saying that, there shouldn't be such a thing as national debt. He has quite a few quotes, along those lines. But the thing is that the Constitution, I mean, it's certainly not a perfect document. One could argue that I think the argument could be made that as much as some people consider it a freeing document, was that it was just a very clever way to incrementally bring in tyranny, and that it was never really like a libertarian document or anything approaching anarchism at all. But, I'm open to both interpretations of that. Right. But bottom line is that certainly there were people back then that had their eye on the idea of no government. Right.
And I mean, and a lot of those amendments, I mean, a lot of that's just not being followed or being allowed, even, it seems to be down there right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, even if the Constitution, mattered to me, I mean, obviously it doesn't matter to the people in Washington, D.C. I mean, they don't. Exactly, yeah. George Bush might have been right when he said, what is it, the Constitution is just a GD piece of paper. I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. You're for the wrong reasons, but you're right.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So is there evidence for anarchism working? Because, I mean, I don't even know if there's real evidence of any system working properly or working good. I mean, there's always
seem like
other...
there's anywhere you could go try it out, seems like everywhere's taken.
Yeah, well, that is a real problem. I mean, but there are areas where, in fact, you mentioned the name of my game company, which is called Zomia Offline Games.
Oh, yeah.
There's a very popular book, I think it's by Jason C. Scott, called The Art of Not Being Governed, and it's all about this area near China called Zomia. It's just this geographic landmass, and it's this area, it's like a hilly area, kind of part of the the mountain ranges there.
Yep.
And the people there, I mean, they have no government. It's one of the few spots on Earth that seem to not be claimed, but otherwise you're right. I mean, they're generally all claimed by somebody. And honestly, even if it's something, like the North Pole or Antarctica or something where it's not claimed, it's all being agreed upon by all the governments of the world that it's not being claimed. So it's still kind of claimed by governments, right?
And it's cold as fuck. Like, I'm pretty good for setting up. Let's go start a commune in fucking Antarctica.
Yeah, we'll take over McMurdo, and yeah, right, exactly. So,
well, you might find that oasis
at the same
inside
time,
it
seems
like might be there's a hot little spot in there with the pyramids down there and everything. You might be able to rebuild that.
Yeah, true that. There you go. I'll go in the lava tunnels.
Yeah, pick up your copy of the Pure Degrees map, and I'm sure you'll find a good spot somewhere.
That's where, in some ways, it seems easier. Like in these small, like Alberta's only got 4 million people, for example, or a state like Oregon's got 4 million people, and I don't know, Montana and Idaho probably aren't much off that either. Like those are the little places that you could get a grassroots movement and maybe co-opt a libertarianism sort of outlook. Like, wasn't fucking Texas libertarian for a while, libertarian governor?
Well, it was.
I mean, you're still binded by federal, but I mean, it's a start. Like, I don't know.
Well, so I'm I live in New Hampshire, and I moved here from New York. Not that that's a far move, but it's certainly a more beautiful one. But anyway, I moved to New Hampshire for what's called the Free State Project, which you can find at freestateproject.org. The idea of that is actually to get 20,000 quote-unquote liberty-loving people to one geographic landmass. And for them to try and influence things to where you get at least towards a brand of libertarianism. I would like it to go obviously significantly much further. There's an active secessionist movement in New Hampshire, trying to break away from the federal government, and actually, so it needed it needed 20,000 signers. That's what that's what the Free State Project board effectively was looking for. And this is a project that's been around for a little over 10 years. And I think just 2 years ago, they finally got their 20,000 signers. And then once there's 20,000 signers, all the people that signed are supposed to, and I mean, there's no enforcement around this, but they're supposed to move within 5 years. So that is an attempt, in that direction, kind of like what you were describing.
Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating.
We should try that shit here. We should get everyone into Alberta.
Yeah, Free Province Project.
Boom. There might be less people in Saskatchewan, but let's be honest, Saskatchewan's a piece of shit.
And we've already got good roads here. No, you know what? We've already got good roads, because when I take the back roads to Saskatchewan, as soon as you hit the border,
Manitoba, bro.
You can fly.
It's like driving into the third world.
No, but just wait. You can fly on a smooth road through the Alberta back roads. As soon as you hit the next province over, you can't even go half the speed. It's completely bumpy. No, it's not the weather.
It's so dry here that the roads are just good maintained.
Yeah, right at the border. Right at the border.
Right at the border, yeah.
Well, that's what they make Jeeps and Land Rovers for, right? So, yeah. But, I will say that I do, kind of to answer another one of your questions about, like, can it actually work? Is there evidence that it works?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
there are little areas where it's being tried, even like in the Middle East and some other spots. But me personally, I said earlier, I mentioned the term biological universals. I'm a big believer in this concept or not a believer. I think it's a scientific concept. It has plenty of research behind it. What's called the Dunbar's number. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, it's 150, I think.
Yeah. So the idea is that you can only have any kind of meaningful relationship with 150 people, and even within Dunbar's number, like, it breaks down into smaller and smaller circles. Like, to have really deep relationships, you can only have between 5 to 15 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that there's actually really something to that. I think that a lot of the aggression, a lot of the problems that occur come from the fact that people do sort of have this loss, they've lost the sense of community, and that I think if you had, I don't ever believe, and there's a lot of anarchists that think the opposite of me. I don't think that we're ever going to have like an entire planet Earth where everything is anarchism, where suddenly all governments are gone. I think there's just too many people that at varying points and for whatever reasons of expressions of traumas or whatever, they're going to want government, or they're going to want something like it, or they're going to want big business or some other kind of nonsense. So my belief is that, you can get a few people together, somewhere within Dunbar's number. I don't know. It could be on the small end or the larger end. And you could get in an area, and I think you can get, I say this all the time, I think you can get about 99% of the way there. You might have to pay a land tax or something, but otherwise you could effectively, within that group, really practice anarchism, even right down to having a miniature economy and all this, even if you're kind of leeching off perhaps of, what the statists, as they call them, or, around you are producing or something along those lines. I mean, to say nothing of, 3D printers and a lot of other technologies that are really empowering individuals to be, one-person economies. I mean, all the way, So that's kind of always been the way I thought about it with anarchism, is that, you can have anarchism, but it's going to be in very small areas. There's a guy, Hakeem Bey, who is widely credited as the guy that inspired Burning Man. The events Burning Man. Yeah. And his idea they were called TAZs, which stood for, it was an acronym for Temporary Autonomous Zone. He also had PAZs, which were permanent autonomous zones. But this is effectively Burning Man, where you have a temporary autonomous zone where you have this one spot where you hang out with your fellow anarchists and everything. And Hakeem Bey was an anarchist. Not to say he was perfect, but anyway, and they would get together and they would have, you would live in this one area for a little while, then maybe you'd move on to another one, or you'd create a permanent autonomous zone or something. So it's not a new idea in anarchism that really the only way you're going to live it is if you're doing it with a small amount of people in varying areas.
Yeah, almost like a commune, really, in a way. I mean, maybe they were trying that type of thing in the 60s too. I don't know.
Oh, sure, the kibbutz or whatever, in Israel.
I lived on a kibbutz for a couple months.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Yeah,
it explains everything, right?
Yeah, it explains a lot.
No, I did. I was picking cotton. I was picking cotton at like 6 a.m. with the jackals and the sunrise in the mountains in the Golan Heights between Syria and Lebanon when I was 20.
Wow, that's got to be a story.
Yeah, I was there for a couple months, and it was like a self-sufficient farm community. It was pretty cool. There was a bunch of
there's a few of those here,
old people there, and then a bunch of travelers from all around the world just living, kind of stalling their travels to just live and not spend money for a while. You didn't make a lot, but at least you got fed, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, certainly those are experiments. And that's one economic system that people can try. I think there's a multitude of economic systems that people can try as far as if they get into those kind of communities. So, yeah, fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of farms here like that. They got like fucking little townhouses.
Well, there's a new acronym.
Can I talk a little weird like this? And I was talking to you a little bit off when I'm talking to you. That's how it is.
Really?
That's where I buy my hay. Great deal.
You don't buy hay.
Yeah, I have to buy hay for the bunnies.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. I go over there and talk like this, sure.
That's an Eastern. You're talking like a Newfie.
No, they're like some sort of weird German.
Really?
Yeah, I think, it's just like, I don't think those people get out a lot.
The
They seem nice
Are you
enough.
sure they're not the Amish type?
Well, they're like Hutterite.
Oh, Hutterite.
Out here, yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Canada
great
is a strange place. No.
Yeah, we are pretty strange. Eh?
Yeah.
Well, most of the places I've been in America got their own sort of strangeness to them.
Oh, I wouldn't argue that for a second. Yeah, I mean,
those are the funnest places, though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Once you get over the initial fear, you find out that, everyone's...
Yeah, kind of like David Bowie said, I'm afraid of Americans. Yeah.
So how do you reconcile the tech part of it? You're interested in tech and anarchism, which is interesting
Bitcoin
because
fits in perfect.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's also the technocracy and that uprising and the technocrats and the technology that's being used to rule the world in the bad way. So you must have to separate that out or figure out how to not fall into that trap.
And then you have to wonder if I get my iPhone X in an anarchist system.
Yeah.
Because that's important.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, it certainly makes for plenty of fodder for my show because, I mean, a lot of these technologies are being used absolutely to, surveil. It's being used against you in a million ways that attack your liberties. And that's often where I come in is that, I kind of, raise the red flag on a lot of these, different technologies that are out there. And I thought it was important to do to do a show about that with the anarchist perspective because most of the tech journalists out there aren't anarchists. Now, I mean, there's plenty of people in the what you could call the tech world that are anarchists. Some of them, make some of the most popular software in the world. For example, the Signal messaging app is made by an anarchist, Moxie Marlinspike. But yeah, there wasn't anybody out there saying, hey, wait a minute, what if, which technologies are actually, which ones empower the individual and which technologies do the exact opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so that's where I come in. And, unfortunately, I have to talk about a lot more bad than I talk about good,
right.
As far as how it affects the individual.
That facial recognition seems sketchy.
Oh, like on the new iPhone?
Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of
reasons. I don't think there's a way to bypass that. Like I won't do the fingerprint feature even, and now you're going to do facial recognition. It's just like, bling, here's fucking Darren Grimes, host of the Grimerica show, general jackass. I don't need that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, biometrics in general are one of the things which is like facial recognition or fingerprint recognition. It's one of the technologies that I, really, rally cry against as often as I can because they fail across the board. The Galaxy S8, Samsung's Galaxy S8, which also came out this year, they did the same thing. They had, their version of Face ID, which is what it's being called on the iPhone 10. And like on the demo floor, the day that they announced it and they put it out there, it was cracked. A guy, they just took a piece of paper with the picture of the guy's face and all they did was like fold the paper. And it, it broke the 3D image scanning of the, the Galaxy S8. I mean, these technologies don't work. I'm
more comfortable with that.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be any better. Maybe it'll be a little bit better, with the iPhone 10 because Apple does have they have all the money in the world. So, they can hire the best engineers in the world. Not that Samsung's too shabby either, but certainly they do a better job as far as security goes. I'm not an Apple fanboy or anything, but in any case, I think we'll find pretty quickly that that'll get cracked too. But not even that. I mean, when you're crossing, I'm sure you guys come to America often enough. Or at least at some points. And, when you're dealing, say, with Border Patrol, United States Border Patrol, there is the huge argument ever since, I guess it was maybe the iPhone, was it the 5 or the 6, when they introduced, Touch ID, which is the fingerprint reader on the iPhone. There was a huge legal argument that kind of is still going on, but it's sort of been resolved, which is, wait a minute, can I be compelled by a police officer or a Border Patrol agent to give my fingerprint? As to where with your password, that's protected. Like if it's a PIN number or a password that you have, you cannot be compelled to give that to them, at least not legally.
You mean to get into the phone, you mean?
To unlock the phone, yes.
Yeah.
So, because that would break your Fifth Amendment rights, at least in the United States.
Not anymore, not in Canada.
You're right.
In Canada, you got to give that shit up.
Yeah, I know it's true for Britain too. It's really crazy, as far as that goes. So, but anyway, there was this huge argument about that. Wait a minute, but can I really do that? And I've recommended on my show, for years, don't use fingerprint sensors because there's that potential that you can be compelled legally, to hand over, to unlock your phone when you don't want to. I mean, of course, yes, the Border Patrol agent, if you don't unlock it, they can take it away from you and they can hold it for like 30 days. There's a lot of legality around that. But in some ways, the principle is the thing, right? Now, here's the thing is that, okay, there's an argument around whether or not they can compel you to use your fingerprint. What argument is there? What's that?
They can just clobber you too.
Yeah, right. Right, exactly. But I mean, take something like the iPhone 10. What argument is there for the police officer to hold, your phone up to your face and just unlock it? Yeah, sure. I mean, right. I mean, there's just, it's the worst security idea, not in history, but pretty damn near, I mean, that's why biometrics for so many reasons is just a terrible, terrible idea. And so, yeah, the iPhone 10, I am not very excited about that at all. So
people only look at it from the aspect of if they lose their phone. They don't think about so many people are just completely blind to the big brother aspect of it all. It's honestly, it's making it easier for them to, because they can literally, like I said, they can just clobber you. Just boom. Okay, buddy's got a couple million in Bitcoin on his phone. Let's go fucking cut his hand off. Hit the road. Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And it really does, all of these things that get sold as security is really only security perhaps against the everyday person, like you said, that, could take your phone, from you or something, or just your run-of-the-mill thief or maybe hacker or something like that that's hanging out at Starbucks. But as far as, the government, as far as the, powers that be, whatever, I mean, for them, it just makes it easy. So, yeah, I find a lot of those technologies to be very troubling. At the same time, part of the reasons I think that people accept this is because there's a million ways in which our smartphones really improve our lives. And that's always, I mean, there's always a trade-off between security and convenience. There's nothing you can do about that. That should be like the 10th law of thermodynamics. Okay. That security and convenience are in constant, conflict and trade-off.
Well, the other thing is that they're already there anyways. They can already, I mean, you talked about Signal, and I've heard you talk about that before, about that being the safer app to use, but, haven't they got backdoor now anyways, and it doesn't matter what app you're using, that they can get the information direct from the source?
Well, they don't have backdoors into Signal itself.
No, but into the device you're using, I mean.
Oh, potentially to the device, yeah. And then, I mean, there's, at the end of the day, it comes down to making it as expensive as possible for, for these various enforcement bodies, governments and domination structures. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Because, I mean, you can make I could make the argument that, Well, but Microsoft, they own your SwiftKey keyboard that you installed on your phone, and they could be logging everything that you type into Signal, so you're screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and I understand that, and I think there's validity to that point.
But it's one level deeper.
Well, not only that,
it's a little bit harder for them to get there.
Didn't one of those CIA fucking drops say that they were infiltrating the phones at the...
That's what I was getting at, yeah. But I mean, like Brian's saying, and like
if you believe WikiLeaks, which, I tend to.
Because when we go out to do the CSETI thing, we only use Signal for the location, right? And I was challenging the organizer on that, right?
I said, well, you're embarrassing me.
I said, well, they can see that app as well, and they were saying, and they made a good argument. They're like, it's just one level deeper of, it's a pain to get there, right? It's much easier if, they can follow our text as opposed to
who's following your text.
I don't know, the deep state or whoever's flying the UFOs around. I don't know. Hey, well, I mean, what do you? I don't know. Hey, I'm trying not to say it's ET when we see lights and shit flying around and flashes and all that.
ET can track signal.
I don't know. Maybe it's the military-industrial complex. I don't know. But I'm trying to be non-dogmatic about what we see out there, and we're just trying to be safe with our communications.
I like that you call them communications.
Well, I say this. Yeah.
Roger.
We'll go back to the CVs, right? Yeah. I mean, it's true. I think that if you are targeted, say, by one of these alphabet soup organizations, the NSA, GCHQ, whatever. Okay, if you're like targeted, like they're going after Graham or something like that, there's nothing, in my opinion, that Graham can do. You're done. They're gonna, whatever it ends up being. One of my favorite things, and now it's more or less been reported about that these things exist in varying other labs and more private labs, not in government ones. But the website Snopes, which. Trust that as much as you want, but I thought it was interesting that if you typed in mosquito drones into Snopes, the answer it came up with was inconclusive. Meaning that, because the idea is that there's these drones that are the size of a mosquito that can record, that can have a camera behind you and everything. And that's a huge thing to understand right there, is that, look, a camera can break all the encryption in the world because it's going to take a picture of what you're doing.
Right.
And so, if mosquito drones are real, well, yeah, I mean, again, they could just send them after, whoever, and then it doesn't matter if they're using Signal or PGP encryption or something like that. I mean, you're done. So if you're being targeted, really, I do think like that there's nothing that you can do. But if you're not being targeted, I think you can really make things expensive for them in the end. And also, I think what's happening is that a lot of these, intelligence agencies, even though that's an oxymoron, but a lot of these agencies, they are starting to rely upon you using Facebook and Twitter and you communicating in the clear as much as you are to communicate with other people, to surveil you. Okay, so because of that, I think if you're not targeted by them and you do start using a lot of these encrypted technologies, I think it can get to the point where you more or less disappear into the cracks. You can really fall away from what's going on a long enough timeline. Because, like I said, they're getting lazy. I mean, we know this. You can see it in the Snowden leaks. You can see it based upon some of the things that WikiLeaks, says, depending on what confidence you have in their information. And so, yeah, I don't think it's a total loss. I don't think it's a depressing thing or that it's write it all off. I think there's actually excellent uses for it, and more so in the future. In fact, there was The Intercept. They leaked they put out a video. This would have been, I guess, maybe about a year ago. That was a leaked Pentagon training video that showed in 2020 or it was 2020, 2024, something like that. It's a very interesting video because what it shows is it's a government prediction of the future and how the military can handle the future, and they're afraid. And the reason they're afraid is because they specifically state that there are going to be multiple economies that are going to exist within cities. There's going to be hidden economies, economies of, interesting economies of scale. There's going to be encryption technologies that we can't break. I mean, they lay out a nightmare scenario for the government.
Yeah. Because they must be so hard to adjust and to move to this new technology and this stuff. I mean, they're like a lumbering ship that can't change course. I mean, I think, and I don't want to make this political, but I think Trump and him being in there is also he's realizing, and other people are realizing that it's just, it's leaking billions of dollars, and you can't keep up with technology. You can't keep up with all this stuff. It's just a big white elephant.
Yeah, I think there's truth to that.
And the government too. I mean, the government can't keep up on it either, I don't think.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing, is because, when you have things like open source software and open source hardware, for that matter, I mean, people can develop things without any, hands involved, from the government or anything else, and they can just make it themselves. I mean, Signal really wasn't made by the government. I know some people want to make that claim. A lot of these technologies just were not, and they're open source, and you can check them out yourself if you want, to prove the point. And I think they're scared to death of that, and I think there's a lot of evidence, that points at it. But that, for the individual, for the everyday person, that cares about their own personal freedom, that's an exciting prospect. Because that means that they can do things where they can keep the government out of their life, they can keep Big Brother out of their life, and whatever else. Yeah,
and they can find new ways to connect and to socialize. I mean, and that might increase the Dunbar's number. Like, I wonder if the Dunbar's number was figured out before technology was really maybe had the potential to increase that. Like, how and what's our definition of a meaningful relationship? I mean, if we're in, we were never able to contact that many people so easily before.
True. Yeah. That's something I've wrestled with. A part of me wonders, for example, you can look at what the tech giants are really experimenting with, and they're doing a lot of real social experiments on their own. For example, Facebook. Facebook has multiple layers. They have groups, there's private messaging, and then there's, the big wide open timeline and all that. It's interesting that so many people are running towards the groups feature in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, I'm starting to think that maybe technology can't so much beat the Dunbar's number. I could be wrong. I'm open to being wrong about anything. But I think people are going to groups because they can't handle 5,000 connections. I think technology will allow you to traverse, geographic areas and geographic limitations, distance limitations. But I wonder, I am still debating in my own mind whether or not it can really defeat the Dunbar's number.
I was thinking more of like doubling it, not making it 10 times, but maybe it's like closer to 300 or 500 or something as opposed to
222.
5,000. But 150, I don't know, 150. I don't always trust those sort of scientific studies of social type stuff. I don't know. It seems, maybe it's...
Well, I definitely noticed that sort of aching for community. I mean, look, we started a little chat room.
That's kind of what
it turns into, a couple hundred people in there making meaningful connections and all sorts of great things happening.
Yeah, so based on how you explained it, that it could kind of double it. I could sort of see that, just because it does make communication and relationships, it can make them more convenient. It can do the opposite too, but it can make them more convenient, maybe to where you could fit in more meaningful relationships. Sure, I could see that.
Yeah. Huh.
Or it could flip the other way and just observe us all the time and fucking chip us.
So what do you see coming up for the new chat rooms and stuff like that? I've heard you talk about quite a few. Like, we ended up on Discord here for Grimerica. I mean, we tried Google Chats, and that limited us to 100. So all of a sudden, we couldn't get more than 100 people in there. So then people were suggesting Discord, and we tried a couple other ones. We went with Discord in the end, and it seems to be okay. But I mean, is there? It sounds like, from listening to your show a couple times, it sounds like there's a whole bunch of these things popping up, and there's a bit of a struggle at the top for who's going to come out.
Yeah, and I think that the winner isn't clear yet. I mean, I don't even think Facebook is safe, as it were, to be like that in the next 10 years. There's going to even be a Facebook. MySpace is a great example of that. I think, 10, 15 years ago, nobody would have imagined that MySpace would have gone away because it was just so popular. Right. But it can, and it's dead now, despite what Justin Timberlake may try. So one of the Discord, I think, is fine. I've used it myself. There's another one called riot.im. That is, one of the things that I think is important is to have encryption available, which Discord doesn't exactly have that, and for it to be completely open source, which I don't believe Discord is completely open source. And so something like Riot is, granted, it's still to some degree, or some of its features, like it has video conferences and it has, audio calling and all that stuff.
Mastodon?
Mastodon is an interesting one. So Mastodon is based upon that does meet the criteria where it's at least open source. It's not really meant to be encrypted, though you could bake it in. Mastodon is based upon what's called GNU Social, which is GNU itself is a very old open source, privacy security concept, I guess I'll say. And so Mastodon is an interesting one. I mean, the only thing is that, the question comes up a lot. Why do people use Facebook? And honestly, I think the reason, and I'm not the only person that says this, I think the reason people use Facebook is because it gives them the opportunity to stoop their neighbor. Okay, and
what does stoop mean?
Oh, have sex, with their neighbor. Yeah. Come on, you lived on the kibbutz. You never stoop. So, anyway,
I'm fucking lost.
I was stooping the Danish ones.
Yeah, all right. So anyway, so I think that's the reason that they want to be there, because anybody can use Facebook, and that becomes the challenge. And it goes back to the point that I made, that you're always going to be trading security and convenience. And you have, of course, what's called the network effect, which means that, as more people use something, more people will end up using something.
Right.
So I think with like Mastodon and some of these other ones, Discord somehow really broke ground, because it was big with gamers, and they're such a passionate culture. Subculture that you're kind of guaranteed to win if you win with them. But yeah, part of the problem is getting your everyday person to be on there, because that's sort of the ultimate payoff. Is that I think for a lot of people, not everybody, but I think for a lot of people, it's because they might be able to get with a gal. And Mastodon, I don't necessarily see that sort of thing happening. Of course, granted, I don't see that happening so much with Discord or Riot or much of these other ones either. But that's why I think it's important I think what needs to happen is the concept of encryption, the concepts of open source, a lot of these things that help you guarantee that the technology that you're using is something that you can at least try and thwart, Big Brother and whatever else with. I think it's important to make it sexy. Like, if you've listened to my show a couple times, I put in all kinds of sexiness as much as I can, because I want these concepts to be seen as I think they are sexy personally. Granted, value is subjective a lot of times, but I think it's really important to make things cool, to make things sexy, and to sell them that way and prove that they are. I mean, in my opinion, there's nothing hotter than getting an encrypted text from a woman. I mean, holy hell, please, that's awesome. I mean, because it's showing off so much. So I think that's a really important thing. And unfortunately, a lot of people, particularly even in libertarianism and anarchism, a lot of them are very conservative. And not that I have a problem with them. I mean, they can be conservative. That's fine. Because of that, they sort of miss kind of touching on maybe more of the primal urges of humanity to get them to understand why you want to use these technologies that are encrypted and open source and private and everything else.
Yeah, I appreciate how you touch on that on your podcast, how you're not afraid to go down into those waters. It seems like there's a bit of a fear now about, talking about that, because of who knows, what, you're going to offend somebody, or somebody's going to be, hurt, or I don't know. It's just, I like how you can openly discuss that.
You're not allowed to offend people in Canada.
Oh yeah, especially in Canada.
Oh yeah.
You go straight
I know.
to jail, motherfucker.
Yeah. Free speech is, I mean, certainly it's an important thing. I think some of the ways that a lot of people that are really activists for free speech, I think they're kind of selling really the opposite, and they're using the term free speech, to kind of worm their way in on things. But yeah, sure, it's a problem that today you really have to be careful. I think there's ways to be, to parlay that sexiness and all that, and yet still be really respectful, to whoever's out there. But that takes time, to build that up. It's not something, and most people don't want to take time anymore, because, we're in the now economy, right? We're in the everything's now, everything's instantaneous. It really takes time for you to build up a reputation where, people know you're not some kind of predator, crazy stalker, or just, some weirdo. Not that weirdo should be a pejorative. I think that should be, one of the highest praises you can be given. But I agree. It can be a problem.
Yeah. So speaking of gaming and stuff, what happened with, What happened with the VR market at all? What do you see going on there? Like, my sister works for Cloudhead Games, which is a pretty cool VR game developer, independent.
Sure.
On Vancouver Island, and I mean, I keep in touch with her a little bit, and I feel like, and we were playing around with VR a couple of years ago, but I just feel like it's off to a slower than it was. Is it the economy, or is it off to a slow start? What is your thoughts about it?
Well,
are you into it? Are you a fan? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, actually, this is like one of the rare market categories where I get to fortunately be positive. I get to like say, oh yeah, no, this is going to be great. I'm a huge fan of virtual reality, not just because, I was a teenager in the 90s, which certainly was being, sold off to us big time, in the 90s, but it was completely impractical at the time. I think what's happening with it, because 2016, and a lot of people were predicting 2017 would be the big year of VR. What really happened is that everybody was pushing for virtual reality, but virtual reality is not the only application of this technology, because then there's also, and you probably know this, because there's also augmented reality. Yeah,
and
right,
which brings on mixed reality and all that. And
Pokemon didn't go very far, but Snapchat is huge.
Yeah.
But it's like the shittiest augmented reality ever. I don't want Snapchat.
Oh, I didn't know. Is that VR? Is that augmented reality?
Oh, boy. You would love it. You can make yourself look like a little kitty or mouse. Or
okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay.
The face swap is probably going to get discontinued because it's probably racist or something.
Oh, right. That did happen, didn't it? With the yellow face, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it was like blackface. That's probably a bit much.
Yeah. Well, so you have augmented. I think what happened was that there was virtual reality technologies, coming into fore, particularly like the Oculus Rift, which got very popular and of course got bought out by Facebook.
Yeah.
Even though it was originally an independent project by John Carmack, who's, big deal in the gaming industry, personal hero of mine. And what happened is I think they realized, oh, wait a second. It's not just going to be this one thing. It's not just going to be virtual reality. There's going to be augmented reality as well. And like the term you mentioned, it's going to become mixed reality, which is what everybody's running on. So I think the market had to shift to say that, okay, we can't just be virtual reality. We also have to be augmented reality. So we're going to do mixed reality. And I think that's why things seem to have slowed down, because it's not just one thing anymore. They can still pay attention to virtual reality, certainly. But I think a lot of the larger companies, particularly Microsoft, is really going all in on this. It's very obvious that, in fact, they have a major event coming up end of October where I think people are going to finally, they have HoloLens. You might have seen that technology demoed.
Yep.
And some of these others. They have they've been doing the biggest push as far as actual virtual reality, where they have headsets at a very low price that can work on almost any computer that's running Windows 10. They're really pushing for this, and I think they see it as when it finally hits. A lot of these technologies we have are very incremental in how they get released to you. Like every iteration of the iPhone is really an incremental iteration, even though it starts putting in some new kind of technology, whatever that happens to be. I think what a lot of the tech giants took notice of was that when Amazon came out with the Amazon Echo, that leapfrogged entire generations of products to where you ended up with, zero user interface, where everything was just done by voice. And even Google at their events have given credit saying, hey, Amazon created a new market category, which that's almost unheard of, at least in the past decade within the tech world. So I think companies like Microsoft and some of these others, they're really banking on the fact that they are going to, maybe in the next year, maybe the year after that, they are going to leapfrog all of these technologies, and that's why they've backed off from their mobile division as well. They're going to leapfrog everything to where, this mixed reality it's how you're going to compute. Go ahead.
No, I think it's good. So instead of putting all your eggs in the virtual reality basket and going with the goggles and everybody doing that, they sort of had to step back and build the infrastructure for more of an all-inclusive, like, mixed reality.
Yeah, and particularly Microsoft is the one that's open about it. Like, they're the ones that don't have to keep secrets because they make money no matter what. And because you can see even in their latest editions of Windows 10, which they do major iterations and upgrades to the operating system twice a year, all of the new apps, all the new software, even their hardware that they put out there, like their big Surface desktops and everything, are all based around this idea of working within mixed reality. Like it's all like Paint 3D or 3D Architect or something like that. Okay. They're creating the infrastructure that will allow the everyday person to be creative in the mixed reality space. And I think they knew they needed to do that. That way, the market itself, the mixed reality market, didn't fizzle when all the hardware finally came to fruition.
So are you kind of talking about, and I kind of picked this up on the last time you talked about that, and we should talk about their future Decoded event coming up as well.
Sure.
Which is interesting, but are you talking about then, so instead of me putting on, like, let's say a set of goggles in a game, when I'm on my computer in the new Microsoft 10, Windows 10 or whatever, let's say I have these cheap goggles that they give you, so that your whole computer experience is in mixed reality. So like you're in the apps, like on your desktop. So instead of looking at your desktop, you're in your desktop, that kind of thing.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Is that you are like HoloLens, particularly, which is something that people can look at, and there's plenty of demos to get the idea. That as soon as you put that on, that's your computer. That's your entire computer.
Yeah, that's I never really got that until I listened to your episode, and then I thought, I wonder if that's what you're talking about. Like you're actually, then you're doing then you're in the Iron Man, like flipping things around with your hand and.
Exactly.
And then I mean, you can even create now in that mixed space as well. Like you could create. I mean, you could go all kinds of places for that, but that's really
kind
interesting.
Of places.
You could create games and virtual chats.
Ooh,
it's going to be.
Would you write with your finger, or would you type, or would you just think?
Well, yeah. There you go.
I mean, you could create the interface, like you could create a keyboard, an augmented reality keyboard, just like, you could say, hey, Cortana, make me a keyboard, and then you could type out. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that could really go. But I think and I know to some degree this sounds crazy to some people, but, I think we're looking at probably within the next 10 years, I mean, we're going to be living in a world where dragons are flying around. Now, they're not real dragons, but just like this stuff, there's just augmented reality everywhere. I mean,
that's your desktop theme. You go into your desktop and your theme is you want your dragons flying around, and then you're going to be in your computer in that environment.
I picture it more like Her.
Oh yeah, yeah. Great movie. Has some problems, but great movie. Yeah.
Where everyone's just fucking, and where the iPhone addiction goes one step further, and then everyone just cuts off, and they're just, intimately involved with their phones.
Yeah, well, I mean, the fortunate thing is with that, and this is a concern people had when Google Glass, when people thought that was going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And Google Glass really couldn't, because it wasn't about projecting a reality around you so much.
Right.
It was just sort of displaying new information to you. And one of the things, and I talk about this on my show a lot, is that, look, I know a lot of people think that these technologies it's like something out of a science fiction movie. Well, the reason that it doesn't go over well with consumers when it finally comes out, even if it is something that may have been literally out of a science fiction movie from the 1980s or something, is because people don't really live exciting lives. They're not doing epic stuff all the time to where it looked cool on Star Trek, but that's because on Star Trek, Starfleet's always doing something. It's always a life and death situation. And so it makes sense.
That's a really good point. I'm going to go into my computer. Oh, what am I going to do in here? Go to Microsoft Word.
I'm going to go to chat.
Right. So even when you release these technologies, like the market doesn't buy it because it's like, well, wait a minute, I don't do anything like that though. Why can't it just give me a good bag of Doritos? And the difference though being with mixed reality, the difference being with something like HoloLens and some of these, I mean, and obviously Microsoft isn't going to be the only one pushing for this. Apple at their event on September 12th was already showing that off pretty hard as well. The difference being is that you are going to be creating the reality around you that can be very exciting.
Yeah.
So that's you are going to be able to project a sci-fi world around you that will be really cool, and then you're going to want the technology because then your life isn't going to be so much bumpkus. So I think that's the big difference in why it will why it'll go huge.
Make some friends, people. You need at least, even if it's CSETI, at least get out with some real people at least once a week. Because I could see that as the next problem. Because I could see in the next 50 years conventional work going away, where everyone's kind of doing a sort of hobby or self-employment sort of thing. I can kind of see it going that way. And so you're going to get to the point where people may literally never have to leave their houses, and they're just going to never leave their houses.
Yeah, honestly, I almost never leave my house. It's terrible. Well, I try to be, I have to be intentional about it, but because, I work from home and there's so many remote jobs now. It's very easy to do, right? But I think you see this with everything. There's always some kind of counterculture to whatever is the prevailing culture, just because there's people who, for whatever reason, I don't want to say it's genetic or anything like that, but whatever the reasons may be, or it's a confluence of reasons, they just want to do what everybody else isn't doing. And so I think you're always going to have that group that's going to, like, people are like, oh, nobody's going to have babies anymore. Nobody's going to do this. No, that won't be true across the board. There's going to be some kind of group that's like, okay, no, I want to go back to the old ways, or I want to go back to, I want to do things, this way and that way. I don't want any part of augmented reality and whatever.
But those augmented reality people are going to go extinct.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe that's evolution solving its own problem, right?
Well, could you imagine? It's like little quick evolution loop. It's just gone in 25 years.
I do think there's going to be more of a shift to the extremes like that, though. People are going to go back to the earth and do this, rewilding kind of thing, or they're going to go down this path where they become more immersed in the mixed reality.
It's funny, me and Adam were talking about something the other day, and he said, like, imagine something your grandkids are going to have. I was like, buddy, I don't think my grandkids are going to have power. Part of me thinks they're not going to have power. Or it'll be some sort of, much more limited supply of it. Like how you just see we're going to get hit by a fucking rock from space or something, It's like our little collective knowledge of what we think is happening on our planet is so minute that...
Well, a coronal mass ejection like the Carrington event could just fuck us up completely.
Yeah, game over.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. One of the things I'm not really pro is transhumanism. I'm not a big fan. Part of that being the reason that, uploading I don't even think you can upload a human's, if somebody uploaded my brain into a robot body or something, that's not me. That's not, you can't, I can't even imagine the science, and I've yet to see anybody even really explain it mathematically, how you could actually transpose my actual thoughts, my memories, RNA and all that, into a robot body. That's just that. It's impossible. You can make a copy. I could imagine that, but then it's a copy. It's not me. And then as soon as there's some kind of EM pulse, all over, for the robot.
I'm sure it would be missing something, like they're finding genetic memory in organs, like especially the heart and things like this. So, you might find yourself in some sort of hellish fucking existence, like who knows what's it like to exist as a machine without a soul all of a sudden? Like how empty would you feel if there is some sort of biological attachment to your body, other than the organs just keeping your brain alive?
Sure. Yeah. In fact, I think I've heard you guys talk about the HeartMath Institute and the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the HeartMath Institute. And they're kind of proving the point is that, look, maybe there's, the first time I heard about the HeartMath Institute, I was like, oh, okay. Because I'm a bit of an armchair historian myself. And, it's interesting that, say, the ancient Egyptians, how in their canopic jars, the heart was such an important thing for them to preserve, and the brain not so much. And I remember, the first time I saw a video from, the HeartMath Institute, that's immediately what I thought. I was like, oh, maybe the ancient Egyptians had some kind of clue into something that we just sort of forgot. So, yeah, I think there's something more to your organs that you have, to your muscle memory, to a lot of things that allow you, that make you who you are, even your ability to, again, express empathy, which I think is incredibly important, even though I know it's a terrible buzzword, especially in the tech world right now. But regardless, I really am not, I am not looking forward to any kind of robot body myself, bottom line.
What about Robot Lover?
Well, now that one. Okay. So this is going to be huge. But so I'll ask you guys, what do you think?
That's what she said.
Yeah. Right. Talking like, this is what I get for being an ugly American, right? I end up talking like the orange guy, But I think it's going to be a big deal. But I'll ask you, what do you think? Who do you say? Sex robots are already becoming a thing. what do you think will be the biggest market for that? Like singles? Who do you think is going to be the biggest for robot lovers?
The fucking
Chinese?
It's going to be
Japanese men.
Fuck. Well, there is definitely going to be a Chinese problem because there's like 50 million fucking dudes in China that can't find a mate.
True.
But there's also the people we were just talking about that are going to be living their lives in a fucking augmented reality in love with someone they'll never meet, and then they'll just throw their face into the robot.
Sure. Okay. So singles
It'll be
people
like
that
the
can't
next
find
level
somebody.
of cyber, I think.
Right. So, I mean, Darren, what do you think?
Because there's no way you're buying a sex robot and your wife ain't going to notice.
Well, I'll get to that. But go ahead.
So what do you think, then? Who do you think it's going to be?
The gamers.
The gamers? Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think
how
these
about you? What do
gamers
you
are
think?
having very much sex.
Well, I think it's the Japanese culture.
Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
No, because
Japan,
they're all about the technological stuff and all these quirky little
But there's
sexual
also, like
things
I
and all
say,
that.
50 million Chinese dudes that have zero chance of finding him.
Well,
Chinese girl.
I think those are all fair points, and I think that those are going to be markets as well, certainly. I mean, in Japan, I used to go there all the time. I mean, yeah, it's kind of been a thing no matter how good the technology was. I mean, there's just this odd obsession with it. But I think that actually the biggest market for sex robots, for robot lovers, is actually going to be married couples, because this is going to be their chance to explore threesomes, to do all of these things that society says is taboo, but they really want to try
anonymously as well. Like they can do it in
Exactly.
the comfort of their own.
Till that thing breaks a couple dicks off, and then game over.
That could happen.
Don't get it's like the update. How you wait a couple weeks to update your phone? Don't get the first sex robot.
Yeah, the dick break bug. That's going to be bad.
The handy's always going to make you nervous. Just like, because I mean, the bits are probably just like the early ones are probably just a pocket pussy into some sort of weird robot.
Yeah, it's just a fleshlight in there.
Yeah. They'll probably be able to limit the muscle power of that somehow.
Well, I mean, soon they must be able to incorporate these lifelike dolls that they have now. I saw a couple of those on Instagram or something like that, and it was pretty insane the way they're making these look so real.
So
and feel so real. So
if
is that the
gets
next
a sex
level
robot
then?
and makes it look just like Graham? Is that okay? Is that okay to you, Graham?
I'm copyrighted.
Are you? Can you be copyrighted?
Well, I guess that with 3D printing, you could probably print whoever you want now on this lifelike structure.
Yeah, like at what point you just come home and you look over and your buddy's printed out your wife, and you're like, what the fuck, bro?
Well, that's going to get into some weird areas. I mean, and that's going to happen. Like, in fact, that's an answer that nobody's really touching, is that, well, there's nothing really to stop you from making a sex robot look like some kind of celebrity, but then you're going to be posting on Instagram, hey, I'm in bed with, Anne Hathaway or something, right? And
then Anne Hathaway's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, right.
Like, it's okay,
and then you're going to be suing
it's just
people.
fake, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a real, that's a real issue. I mean, at the, looking further into the future, I think it's going to end up really, sex robots might not even really be a thing. It's all just going to be done, again, what we were talking about, it'll be done in mixed reality, yeah. Which just makes sense. And then you have...
Dink? Or you won't even need that. Will you have to, will you have an attachment?
Yeah, Darren's trying to figure out how the physical part of it happens. Like, the VR, the mixed reality part is in your head, but what are you doing with your body? Especially if you're with your wife trying to practice a threesome or something like that.
Well, you and your wife will both be connected via your router at home. And but no, I mean, really, like, what would end up happening, either you're going to have some kind of suit, which I think that would be impractical. In that case, people are just going to buy sex robots. Probably, and I'm not saying that I like this, I actually don't. Probably what they'll do is, you're effectively going to, like, do some kind of neural link to your brain, and your brain's just going to tell you that you're feeling it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Wow.
That's getting
that's going to happen quick enough that it'll
It's going to be like that movie Existenz, where they you're going to have to get a socket put in, and then you have to plug that motherfucker in.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, with Kyle MacLachlan, I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to be fucking...
Yeah, well,
at least the start is going to be like, that's the thing, is I think our lifetime, you're looking at like the Wild West of fucking implanting things into your brain. And, I'd give that a couple years. I think, you might miss out on that.
Yeah, I mean it's happening, and honestly, I think a lot of the tech world itself is really. I think they're using the fear mongering of artificial intelligence to kind of get people into that idea that we need to do what's instead of AI, you need to do what's called IA, which is intelligence augmentation, meaning that you connect, that you upgrade the human body, be it with like adding a hard drive to a brain or something like that. And like Elon Musk is really big on this. And I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but, Elon Musk is saying, yeah, we need to look into IA because, we have to improve humans to be able to combat what he considers to be the inevitable artificial intelligence.
You can't be an anarchist or a libertarian and like Elon Musk too much, I don't think.
It's funny. In a lot of my circles, they love him, and I get so livid about that because this guy lives off of like every government program, every government tax dollar in the world. It's ridiculous.
He's like a subsidy superstar.
Yeah. Exactly. Well said. Yeah. But, so this intelligence augmentation is something that's coming. Now, I'm not necessarily against that idea, but it needs to be something that you can remove. It shouldn't be something that's permanently there. There's a guy, his name's Brian Johnson, and I don't mean the AC/DC singer, but Brian Johnson, who he was not a co-founder of PayPal. I think he created Braintree, which ended up getting bought up into PayPal. And he has a program called Kernel, or a development house, I guess I should say, called Kernel, which is all about doing intelligence augmentation. But one of his, core precepts is that it has to be removable. It cannot be something that gets permanently attached to the body. And when I hear that, I feel a little bit better about it. But yeah, still a little skeeved, still a little worried we're going to be like Kyle MacLachlan in Extends, and who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, like I say, just wait, people. We give it a couple of generations before you dive in would be my advice. Like these people chipping themselves already. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I'd give that a bit. There's going to be some,
you already chipped if you've had vaccines.
Tech cancer.
You're already in there.
Ooh, there it is.
Yeah. So here, this is the way I see it going down. The next level.
A-okay then.
The next level of the sex robots will be. I mean, we're not far away from this.
Back to the sex robots.
Well, I just want to clarify what can happen in the near future here. So you've got this lifelike doll, let's say, and she's connected to your VR. So if you put on your goggles with somebody or whatever, and then you have the physical lifelike thing there as well, but it's all connected to the VR.
Yeah, I could, sure, and then you could kind of create a different, you could be hanging out in the Bahamas or something with this robot then, right? I mean, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, you're in a different world, but there's a physical thing there that's connected to this. So when you're looking at it or touching it, it's there in your physical touch, but it's also in your
it's
world.
doing a lot more. Yeah, I could see that. Yep, I think that some kind of amalgamation like that could certainly be possible. But again, I'll just reiterate, I really think that sex robots and all of that technology is going to be the biggest market for it will be married couples, I think, because there's just so much stigma around them. But then at the same time, if you ever talk to them, they're always joking about, well, not everybody, but they're always joking about threesomes. They're always joking about getting a hooker or something like that. And now they get to play out all those fantasies.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I could see that.
I think, I don't know. I don't think we're quite there yet. It's just going to be a glitchy sex robot that's like, hello, Graham.
Well,
it's like whenever I think AI is close, I try and use my Siri, and it's just like, oh my god.
Oh, Siri is terrible. Siri is so bad. Well, that's the thing too. I don't think artificial intelligence, that kind of level of stuff, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I mean, they've been promising, or what I should call, I guess, AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is more something like you'd imagine Skynet being, where it has something remotely like consciousness. I mean, that's been getting promised since the 50s, and it's never happened. In fact, there's a great quote in the robotics field that is, you never realize how intelligent a moron is until you try to program a robot. And
how weird would it be to be fucking a robot that's just, it's a robot and it's got the intelligence of a fucking 10-year-old or something. It's just
but you can't argue that
sex robots for you. Sorry, Brian.
No, but can't you argue that when quantum computing happens, that'll enable that? Maybe we're just processing power away from that, them knowing a Google that can just pick up absolutely everything, and then he's got so much processing power and so much information and so much data that it can be considered, AI and pass that test?
I'm open to that. It could reach something like consciousness, or what I like to use the term sapience. And really, that moment comes when a software or a robot or something does something that it was never programmed to do. Then we need to start asking questions, saying, all right, wait a minute, what exactly is that? Is that life over there? And not just something that we programmed. I'm open to doing that. What I'm not open to is like this idea that it becomes something superior to human intelligence. I mean, another quote that I love to banty around, which kind of plays off of that old engineering joke, is that artificial intelligence is no match for natural stupidity. I really I think I guess as an analogy, artificial intelligence works like a single core processor. Okay. Now we don't use single core processors anymore, in our computers. But anyway, this used to be like the high end stuff. And with a single core processor, you can get it to go really, really fast, and it can handle like one task really, really well. Well, I think the human brain actually works more like a multi-core processor, where it can handle a lot of different things in parallel. And I think I think that ability to do more and not necessarily faster, it's kind of the tortoise and the hare, is a far more powerful and will always be kind of the superior intelligence, as it were. So, yeah, I could see that robots could get to a point where they have something like consciousness and maybe where they deserve liberties of some kind. Yeah. But I don't ever think that we're going to have an AGI where, it's better than us.
Yeah, that shit ain't happening.
Because you know what else?
These robots are going to work so that we can have some fucking liberty for a change.
Didn't you read Dune?
Robot slaves? Robot slaves?
Well, let's not make them smart enough that they have any of that shit. They're just smart enough to, deliver the mail, or fucking, they're highly specialized. And they can go home.
Just put them in the public school system.
There we go. Ding.
So the other factor comparing AI to human intelligence is the how do I explain this? Then I don't want to make it too simple, but the access to higher consciousness or Akashic records. I mean, whatever you believe as far as like. I'm not talking about religion or anything like that, but there is evidence that through, OBEs and NDEs and all this kind of stuff that there's something else going on there, right? I don't know what it is, but, we do have access to something else sometimes. So that's another factor.
And each other.
That's the other accent, the X factor.
Yeah, I get the concepts of the Akashic record or even like there's some terms like parallel tonality, where the idea is that the human brain is actually, it's not like a hard drive. It's more like a wireless receiver. Like it receives, it doesn't actually store, or, information. I'm myself. I'm open to like some of those notions. I'm skeptical of it overall. I mean, I think really we have a bubble universe under our skull, and no one else can see it. And I'm always glad for that, because boy, if some people knew the things I was thinking at certain times, it'd be pretty troubling. But I don't know. I mean, and could an AI get to a point where maybe it access something like that? There's a lot.
I don't think it can. I mean, I don't think it can. That's the advantage.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's the advantage. Yeah. That's the ultimate advantage that we have over anything artificial. Is we have a natural, organic connection to the field. I mean, and I do think there's going to be evidence in the near future that will just shatter our scientific paradigm that says yes, we are connected through. Unseen ether or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, certainly, like, evolution has programmed us in ways that, in my opinion anyway, in ways that, we don't even fully understand. I mean, and that we're just learning about. Even things like smell. Just in the past couple of years now, there's been research that's shown that actually the smells that no matter how much you wash, whatever, it's just like your natural odors have a lot to do with attraction. I mean, and people say, well, of course, we've always known that. No. We're talking about like where if you smell the wrong way, and it's almost an imperceptible smell that, someone's just they're never going to get with you, and so there's literal chemistry between us in that sense. So, a lot of that kind of stuff is there. And Yeah, I don't think humans are that great of programmers, and you only need to try using, I mean, we've been lucky enough using Skype here, but you only need to use Skype on the one wrong day to realize just how, bad humans are at setting things up. So, yeah, I agree. There's a lot of things, a lot of attachments that we have to the, to our the ecology around us.
Nature,
around us that I think I agree with you there, that it will always, stand up against, any AI or any program thing that we come up with.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be, be supernatural or anything crazy. It just has to be, eventually it will be some sort of physics, or it'll just show that something like Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance, or, morphic field, that the way we do evolve and stuff happens, it's not directly, it's not directly physically related. It'll be interesting to see what happens along with this, along with AI and mixed reality. I mean, it's all happening. It all feels like it's happening pretty quick.
Right? Oh yeah, it's going to be a couple of decades.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Absolutely.
I wouldn't mind getting into Bitcoin for a bit here. There's going to be a bunch of people that'll be super upset if we don't at least touch on Bitcoin.
Sure,
let's do it.
We should jump into that. We're both pretty Bitcoin stupid, so I could do with just a rundown from the top. We have some Bitcoins, not full Bitcoins.
We've lost more Bitcoins than we have.
Yes, we have lost Bitcoins.
The people, they went to the wrong person. They wouldn't give them back.
I was giving out the wrong Bitcoin address for a while. I was giving out the Bitcoin address of someone I had bought something off of. And then when I emailed them, they were like, "Nope, didn't happen." So then I sent them some screenshots of the transactions, and I never heard from them again.
Yeah.
So much for anarchism. Jeez.
But I think
that's that caveat emptor,
Yeah.
I think we have, I always get pretty nervous, so whenever we get some Bitcoins, I turn them into the PayPal pretty quick because it's so volatile. Like the one time
just leave it in there, man. That's it. Yeah, we're in no rush to.
Yeah, sometimes it's it went down to $200 for a while, and it's oh man.
Just ride it out.
Yeah, could do that. Absolutely. It makes me nervous, though, that it's just going to be boo, gone.
Sure. Well, would you like me to kind of describe Bitcoin a bit? Or?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't seem real to me still on a bunch of different levels.
Yeah, so, okay. The simplest way to explain what Bitcoin is, we can start with that, and it can be explained in pretty short order. Imagine it could be the Canadian dollar or the U.S. dollar. Imagine the dollar, and then imagine PayPal, which PayPal is effectively an electronic transmitter for the dollar.
Okay.
Now, imagine that PayPal and the dollar were actually one technology, and that's Bitcoin. It's the transmitter and the store of value. It's the transmitter and the dollar at the same time. I think that's the easiest way to explain what cryptocurrencies, or in this case Bitcoin, is that it's the store of value as well as what transmits the value at the same time, and that's what gives it its actual value. As far as its present value at $5,000 or whatever, a lot of that has to do with infrastructure and speculation. Okay, but in the beginning, and when Bitcoin first kind of started out back in 2009 and maybe a little before, its value came from the fact that it had its own transmission system, that it could cross borders, especially at the time, without fees, or without crazy fees anyway, compared to, say, Western Union or something like that. That's really where its intrinsic value, which is what a lot of people look for. That's where that comes from. So the easiest way to understand cryptocurrencies is that it's PayPal and the dollar in one technology.
And it's not, but it's something, isn't it? It's something. It's not something physical, but it is bits of actual data, isn't it? What's mining? What are you mining?
Yeah. Okay. So, the mining part. Yeah, that's one of the ones that understand. A lot of cryptocurrencies have even gotten away from that. After a fashion where they don't even really get involved in the mining process so much. What mining is. So Bitcoin exists as a data set. It exists as, however many megabytes, or now it's, hundreds of gigabytes, whatever, of data that more than one person, or even just one person, can really have it, but that people store on their computers, whatever those computers may be. Okay, so that's That's where Bitcoin sits. That's why it's called a decentralized technology, because it exists on, it doesn't have a central server, right? It doesn't have like, Google servers to rely upon. And so it's resilient because of that. But, anybody that has like the Bitcoin client and not just a wallet, those are two very separate things. But anybody that just has that Bitcoin wallet or that Bitcoin client, and has the entire what's called the blockchain, which is that data set that stores all of those that money transmission that I described, that it's a public ledger of everything, all the transactions that have happened with this money. Anybody that has that has a copy effectively of all the Bitcoin out there. Okay. And the mining process is really what it is. It's about securing that network. Okay. When more than one person has the Bitcoin client, they have the blockchain installed on their computer. Mining is just a fancy way of creating a reward system for securing and constantly verifying the data being transacted between anybody that has a Bitcoin client or the Bitcoin wallet. So calling it mining is kind of a misnomer. It's only called that because there's a reward. Really, it should kind of be called securing, because that's what it's doing, is it's proving that a transaction actually happened. It's
so they're taking the fees.
Yeah, and they collect fees for that. There's rewards for securing the network, which makes sense. You want to incentivize, the fact that you're doing a whole lot of processing, as far as you're processing an entire economy, which, the Bitcoin ecosystem is an economy.
So then the actual Bitcoin value is all just then what's bought in with dollars, actual physical dollars. Like, you can't get Bitcoin for now. Oh, I guess you can if you become, say, the middleman or the verifier or whatever. You could collect those fees all day and make sort of money out of nothing, but really you're not making money out of nothing.
Well, I mean, all money comes out of nothing, right? I mean, the U.S. dollar is an agreement that piece of paper means something. And so Bitcoin, same deal. Like, is it magic internet money? Did it come out of nowhere? Yeah, more or less. But then it came out of nowhere and people agreed that it had value. Years ago, someone decided 10,000 of these things is worth a pizza. And, that really happened. Things like when that starts to happen, when there's actual transactions happening, to some degree, when dollars get bought in, which you have, in investing terms, you have what are called whales, people that'll buy into something and they'll buy a lot of it. When that comes in, sure, that raises the value of it. But regardless, like what any value that it has, and it has to start with something, it has to start with some kind of, exchange value, merely comes from people finding utility in it. It's not like the U.S. dollar where, it's backed by nuclear weapons. People have to agree with Bitcoin that, no, just, okay, yeah, well, I like Bitcoin because it's not from the government or because it's easy to transact and secure or something like that. So that's where the value in it comes from me. So I will give you a car for that Bitcoin. And that's the part that people don't, I think when they first look at Bitcoin, the part they don't want to accept is that they find out that like all money is an illusion, because that really kind of unravels your reality in a way when you start to realize that, wait a minute, all money is just an agreement between two parties, that means something. So yeah, Bitcoin kind of came out of nowhere, but there were people who, be it hackers, whatever else that agreed. Yeah. Okay. No, I'll give you something for that.
Have you heard about? I met this guy at the Red Pill Expo, and he was talking about he's got a gold vault, I guess, and he's connecting it with cryptocurrency somehow. The Anthem Vault. Have you ever heard about anything like that? Like actually physically getting some gold backing for crypto, or is that possible?
Sure. So this comes, again to somebody deciding that, well, I accept Bitcoin. I'll give you gold for your Bitcoin, right? I mean, so that agreement is made.
Well, I don't know if it's Bitcoin though. It might be its own.
Yeah, I know of Anthem Vault. I think they may be using because there's a lot, it's not just Bitcoin anymore. Now there's tons of cryptocurrencies, Exactly. There's Zcash, which is a really anonymous and private based one. I think that's really interesting. There's a whole slew of these out there. Okay.
Which one should we buy into?
Is this getting out of control for the government and the corporations right now? I feel like it's like sliding past.
And can
somehow.
They kill it? Because they just pew. A Bitcoin destructing virus or something like that.
Well, that's the thing, is that and that's one of the beauties and one of the reasons that people find value in all of this is that that you can't kill it. Because again, it's not, there's no you'd have to point the guns of the state or the virus of the corporation, or whatever. You'd have to point it at every computer that has the Bitcoin client. And there's a lot of them, and they can just keep making copies, because as long as one person has a copy of the blockchain, Bitcoin will continue to exist. So go ahead.
Do you think there's any conspiracy over how Bitcoin was created, and whether it was like an intelligence agency like CIA or something that, sometimes I go through these periods where I think, it's got to be a setup from the beginning, but maybe not. Maybe after talking to you, I feel like there's more open source going on than I realize sometimes.
Sure.
True open source without the, influence of, 5,000 CIA tech bots or, trolls out there or whatever.
Right. I think so. Some people have laid out theories that Bitcoin is some kind of it's a government creation to get us to a cashless society where everything is out in the public and you can keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
I get those arguments and I can understand them. And even if that were true, the idea of blockchains, the peer-to-peer decentralized technology where it's not being stored on central servers, that itself is not inherently a controlling concept or like an anti-individual technology. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It really empowers the individual.
Yeah.
So regardless of how Bitcoin was created, and nobody knows. Satoshi Nakamoto, it could be a he, could be a her. Quite frankly, it could be an it. We don't know. It could be a bunch of people. So whoever created it, we don't know. And I appreciate and understand where people are coming from when they're concerned about that, and I really do appreciate that skepticism. But the technology itself is still totally valid as far as its application. And like I mentioned, the one Zcash, and there's some others that are based on the same technology, like Zencash and some others. It's based on this what's a breakthrough in cryptography called zero knowledge proofs. It's very exciting stuff because you don't get too many breakthroughs in cryptography every day, and that is like an anonymous, where things can be anonymous, where it's not a public ledger. You don't really know what happened. The only people that know are the two parties that transacted. Sure, right.
Can we make our own?
What was that called again?
Can we make a Grimerica coin?
You could.
Well, I can't personally. Is that how hard is that to do? Can I just say it? That's a thing.
Well, you could make a complete copy of Bitcoin and of the software and just rename everything in it. You could just get into the code and just name it Grimerica coin or whatever. And then you would have Grimerica coin. That's the beauty of open source technology, is that you can, copy it and you can know what's in it and you can get into it yourself, which gives you kind of personal security if you know what you're looking at.
It could be backed by unobtainium.
I can't fucking do any of those things you just said.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe I know you have smart listeners, so maybe one of them wants to jump on that.
We do definitely have some listeners that might be able to do something like that. So maybe we should have a little Grimerica coin. But you're not donating Grimerica coins, because I don't think those things are ever going to be worth shit.
So this is inspiring though. It does seem to be going somewhere. Absolutely. And is there somewhere where you would put your focus on? Would it be Bitcoin or some of these other Zencash things, or what would you do?
Bitcoin is certainly the king right now, and Bitcoin is really it's settled in on a role. The role being, as in ROLE, the role has in being it's digital gold now. There's companies where you could even use it to buy physical gold if you wanted, like Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. There's some other ones out there that will accept Bitcoin.
Wow.
In fact, they want Bitcoin.
Wow.
So, but Bitcoin itself has taken on the role of digital gold. Now, you can have other currencies that can do other things. And there are plenty of them out there. I'm very cautious with a lot of these because some of them could just be straight up scams. It could be just exactly right. It could just be two guys in Canada that just, So I'm very particular in which ones that I get excited about. And usually for me to get excited about them, they have to have some kind of technology that either makes them better than Bitcoin, something like when I mentioned Zcash, or it needs to be something where it can be a nice test ground for what happens with Bitcoin. Like there's another one called Litecoin, and it's LIT.
Yeah.
Right. That one's kind of known because it's been around for a while. In fact, it used to be called the silver to Bitcoin's gold. So there's that one that's interesting. There's Monero. There's a few others out there that do some interesting things. Really, I think the only thing that can unseat Bitcoin and that would be more interesting than Bitcoin is something that is more private and secure than Bitcoin. That's the only thing that could be greater than Bitcoin. And that's where like these technologies like zero knowledge proofs and some of these other ones become very fascinating to me. Yeah. So those are the directions that I look in. And another thing, the other danger is that you have there's this thing called Ethereum. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Right. So Ethereum is what I like. So, all right, what I like about Bitcoin, Litecoin, Zcash, Zencash, those kinds of things. What I like about those is that they're very purpose-built in many ways. Like they're designed to do something, and they have limited design to some degree, and that limited is a feature. Being limited is a feature, not a bug. Okay. Because that means it's meant to do what it's meant to do. Now you have Ethereum where the idea is that, okay, it's a blockchain, but it's supposed to enable you to do anything on top of it. I consider that by its very nature to be not secure. Okay. And all you need to do for examples, for analogies, not that proof by analogy is proof, but for analogies is look at like operating systems and how many times, when you hear from WikiLeaks with Vault 7 leaks or something, it's always the operating systems that are always cracking because they're general purpose and they have to do so much. So it's so easy to find some kind of, crack in the armor. Okay. And so I think when you start building, when you start building things like Ethereum where it's meant to do everything, you run into a lot of problems. Right. And also, I think there's a lot of parts of human interaction that don't need to be on a blockchain. That don't need to take advantage of this technology.
Right.
There's times where, it's totally valid to have a central server. It's totally valid to do all this stuff. So I'm not a fan of Ethereum. If you're going to ask that, I'm actually quite against it. Because of that wide general utility of it, I think is really a problem. I think when Satoshi made whoever or whatever Satoshi was, when they made Bitcoin, it was purpose-built, and that purpose-built was for the purposes of security. Like that was on purpose that they didn't make it, more programmable and have wider application.
That's interesting. That's good to know. So I also met this guy at the expo who had created an app. He's a Bitcoin enthusiast, and he had created an app to help merchants get on it, right? So he would, he would go to buy something, and he would donate.
Sunridge.
He would go to a merchant. And I believe he wouldn't even buy anything, but he would donate Bitcoins to them. Okay. So that then somebody could come and use that as a transaction. And it took me a while to wrap my head around it, but it was a pretty cool idea because I think it was based on he was just donating them to merchants as he went along, just to try and build that community of users. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's certainly been something in the Bitcoin community and in others, but mainly in the Bitcoin community where that's exactly what they've done is they'll ask, they'll go to some business, somebody, a Bitcoin user or whatever, will go there and say, hey, will you accept Bitcoin? I'll buy this off of you, and sometimes it'll be something substantial. Yeah. And that person will also, it sounds almost like, like a come to Jesus moment, some kind of Christian, like proselytizing or something. But yeah, and they'll try to get people on board with taking Bitcoin. And that's been pretty successful. In New Hampshire alone, New Hampshire's probably next to maybe California or like Sweden, it might be the state or the geographic area with like the most Bitcoin accepting businesses in the world. Though Berlin's pretty big up there too. I should mention that. Anyway, for a long time, New Hampshire was a really hot spot for it. And that all came from people, just customers who were excited about Bitcoin telling their, the businesses that they frequent, be it a barbershop or whatever, saying, hey, would you accept Bitcoin? And then they hook them up. And it's gotten, the technology really has gotten to the point where it is very easy to use.
Right.
There's concerns around that, but because like I said earlier, you always have that trade-off between security and convenience. But it's better than using government money in my opinion.
Yeah,
so I let it ride. Yeah.
Right on. So hey, before we wrap it up, there, tell us just how people can listen to your podcast and what it's about and stuff like that, and how to get a hold of you.
Sure, absolutely. So the best place to go is my main website, which is zog.email, which stands for Zomia Offline Games.
ZOG in Canada.
Yeah, there you go, ZOG. Yeah. .email, and that you can find everything. I have a book called Dark Android, the 2017 edition, which is the no-nonsense guide to securing your smartphone and reclaiming your privacy. Yep, you can get that. And I have a newsletter there where you can find out about everything that I do when you sign up for that. And it's not any kind of spammy nonsense. It's really something I spend a lot of time on. You can find my podcast there as well. Or if you want to go to sovryntech.com, and it's just like my last name, SOVRYN, tech.com, and you can find my podcast there. And yeah, I've been doing this for about 6 years. So.
Nice.
Are you just on SoundCloud still?
That's a perfect name for what he does. Sovereign, it's like sovereignty. That's perfect.
Yeah, it got to do a nice pun on words there, but or play on words. But I am on SoundCloud, but if you type any podcast app you have, you type in Sovereign Tech, it's going to show.
Okay, because I think SoundCloud is on the way out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another conversation.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
So, but if you want to
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, if you want to find everything, just go to zog.email. That's my central hub of everything I do because I wear a lot of hats. So.
Right on. And those links will be in the show notes as
always
well.
in the show notes. People just don't check the show notes. They're always like, what's the song?
I think I heard that from Brian, actually.
Oh, in the show
notes.
Just in my last episode that I did from a hotel room.
That was a great episode, actually, yeah. That was good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It didn't have my usual level of production. But from a hotel room. And I complained about that. I was like, boy, does anybody check the show notes? I can see who's clicking through, or, I can see how many click-throughs I get. And nobody ever checks show notes.
No.
But if you don't put them there, they're like, well, how do I know you know what you're saying?
Exactly.
Which is it, man?
I don't even tell Graham you can check those things.
No, I don't want to know.
Because he puts a lot of work into them.
No, I don't want to know. Right on, Brian. Well, thanks, man. Keep in touch, and thanks for coming on the show. And sorry we got to run here. We just got another
we follow each other on Twitter now, so we're
good.
Twitter friends.
Right on.
Yeah, no worries. Always a great honor to have you on. I got to get you guys onto my show, actually.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah, for sure.
Excellent.
All right, Brian. Thanks a lot.
Brian.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
That was a chat with Brian Sovryn from Sovereign Tech.
That was great.
Yeah, I like it. I like Brian. It's good.
I knew you'd like the tech and the anarchy part of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Burn this motherfucker down.
Yeah. No, it was really interesting.
Perfect. Well, you guys can, as always, you can donate Bitcoins. There's a wallet address on the thing. I should have asked him what happens. Like my computer's on the way out. Can we transfer it to? It'd be good to get it onto this computer somehow. This computer seems pretty solid.
What do you mean by that?
Can you have it? Because I think you can't have it. Like it's not on a cloud. It's got to be on a physical device.
Huh. I don't know. Oh, you think so?
I think.
No, I don't think.
Yeah.
You must be able to get it over there.
One of our listeners knows that shit. They can let us know.
Yeah.
We need a rundown. We really are just Bitcoin illiterate.
Yeah.
Like, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
So check out the support page. That's where the link is for that. Of course, check out, there's a bunch of different ways you can support the show there as well. You can support the show, sign up for monthly through PayPal. You can, I think that's it really. Or you can do a one-time donation. Of course, if you can't afford to support the show monetarily, that's fine too. Just, you spam Graham. You can send us in your synchros and shit, because that gives us some content, so that helps us out. People love that stuff. That's always good. You can review this motherfucker. We don't have a lot of reviews compared to our listeners, so that kind of sucks. And you know what? Downloads are down. So we need to get them the fuck up. And the only way to do that is for you guys to tell your friends about the show. So tell people about the show, please. If you don't do anything else, tell people about the show. Spread the show. Spread it on Facebook. Spread it on Twitter. Spread it wherever the fuck you want. Just spread the love. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. And we will see you next week.
Once upon a time, you were tiny, then you grew big, and your bald spot got shiny. Your brain be changing, got a pocket full of change, and now you're picking out the colors for your floral arrangement. Your brain be changing, you got a pocket full of change, and now you're picking out the colors for your floral arrangement. Once upon a time, you slept in a crib, you wore a bib, now you got a wife and kids. Your brain be changing, you got a pocket full of change, and now you're picking out the colors of your floral arrangement. Your brain be changing, you got a pocket full of change, and now you're picking out the colors for your floral arrangement. Once upon a time, you had no concept of time. Now it blows your mind, and now it blows your mind. Your brain be changing, you got a pocket full of change, and now you're picking out the colors for your floral arrangement. Your brain be changing, you got a pocket full of change, and now you're picking out the colors for your floral arrangement.